Willie D Live.
And I think a big reason why they seek it is because they can't cope. They can't cope like millions of people, hundreds of millions of people get up every day, go to school, go to work, do whatever they got to do to get through the day. And a lot of these guys, they ain't got it. As tough as they try to act, they ain't got the heart to get up and be responsible on a daily basis. That's why a lot of them do it. They looking for that attention because they ain't really got nothing else, or at least they don't want. I think that everybody do have something. Everybody have some type of gift that they can do just as good or better than anybody else and get paid at doing it, but they don't want to do the work. And so they take the shortcut.
Instant gratification.
They want that instant gratification. And speaking of old cases and old villains, do you remember this group from way back in the 80s called the Smurfs? They were terrorizing the city.
I do.
It's a young gang of people.
Yeah, I faintly remember that.
Going around terrorizing the city. I was still a kid myself around that age, but I forgot whatever happened to them. But I know it kind of went away. Also, remember during the 80s also, that was the cab killings that started.
Yep.
I had a very interesting story about that. The guys who started the cab killings knocked on my door and asked me to go with them the first day they did it. It's like, let's go get some money. And
what'd you say?
This was during my cowboy western days.
Yeah, okay.
You know, and so, I was in the streets doing crazy stuff, and I looked everybody over, and I was like, nah, man, I'm going to pass on this. I'm gone. I didn't know they was going to kill. I just thought they was just going to rob. But I was like, nah, I don't want no parts of that. And they went on, and the next morning, that first victim was in my neighborhood. Old black man, elderly black man. They killed him for $36. $36 and ruined all their lives. They were all 15, 16, 17 years old. And all of them just threw their lives away. Just like that. That temporary decision with permanent results.
And you go back, and I'm sure you go back and you just say, thank God I didn't make that.
Yeah, man.
I mean, and like I said, I believe things happen for reasons, and there's a reason you didn't make that call that day.
Yeah, man. I was like, that really, really tripped me out. I think about that often. Some of the other crazy decisions I've made, but I think I've been okay, man, because I've done a lot more good than bad, and I've always, I would say since the 7th grade, I started kind of like looking out for people. I used to be a bully when I was like up until the 7th grade, but then it was something that clicked, and I started like defending people that was being bullied. I was like, I didn't like being a bully. I didn't like bullies. So people used to befriend me, like kids in the neighborhood would befriend me so that they could get protection from the bullies. I had a lot of friends growing up, and in school. But I got to a point I just didn't like bullies, and I don't like any kind of bullies, not just street bullies. I don't like corporate bullies. I don't like governmental bullies. I just don't like people that try to push people around who they feel is weaker.
Take advantage. There's an adage that I've always had. Anybody can yell and scream about the injustice of the world. I would much prefer to find a solution or a remedy for that. And one of the ways I do that is getting legislation. I've done over 25. But I'll tell you a story. It was 2018. You might remember this case. It was a little boy, 4 years old, Sir Romeo, which was a really cool name, first of all, to have. He was watching TV in his grandma's place, and there was a street fire. A bullet struck him.
Okay.
And for 6 months, he was at the hospital being rehabbed, put back together again. And I remember the grandma, Lori, called me afterwards and said, is there anything you can do, help us? We really don't want to take him back to the same place he got shot at. That's a good question. I said, Lori, I said, that's a really, you bring a good, because we actually passed legislation on crime victim compensation for relocation expenses, but it was for domestic violence and sexual assault, and this 4-year-old Saromia didn't fit that. And so I said, and I brought this to, at that time, State Representative Garnett Coleman. It was in his district, and that's how I like to do it. And I brought it to State Senator Boris Miles' attention. Did background. We ended up getting a bill filed. It ended up getting passed. We became the first state in the nation to pass a bill that allows any families whose children were the victims of attempted murder to get relocation expenses from the Crime Victim Compensation Fund. And I remember when it passed, I called Saromio's grandma, and I said, Lori, I don't get a chance to smile too often, but I said, I am absolutely, I told you we were going to make a difference. And I told you what was going to happen, and we did it, and we actually named the bill the Saromio bill.